Welcome to the Podcast Connector podcast. My name
Woo!
is Christina Rice, and I am joined by my co-hosts, Kelly and Kelsey. Hi, friends.
Hey,
Hi, welcome. I'm so excited about this.
super
Me
pumped.
too. So we're starting this podcast because we have a business called the Podcast Connector, and it's pretty fun. We're like a dating service for podcasts and guests. We match up podcasts and guests because we don't really like the standard pitching space. It can be a little slimy sometimes.
A little aggressive.
So a little aggressive. So we're trying to, just change the way people connect with shows. And I've been podcasting for over 5 years now as we record this. I've been in this space for a long time, which is why I ended up creating the Podcast Connector. Kelly has been doing this with me. She's been my support team for the podcast for how long, Kel?
It's been 3+ years now, which is crazy because I feel like it's been like a second. But now that, I've been in the podcasting world for 3 years in the back end. So I've seen some stuff. It's been cool.
Yeah.
And then there's
and
me.
Kelsey.
Didn't mean to cut you off, but real quick, this may or may not be my first time on an actual podcast, but I will definitely say I'm a semi-professional podcast listener for going on 6 years now. So
Wow.
I'm going to bring that intel to the table.
You learn a lot about podcasts by listening, but there's definitely a lot behind the scenes that you don't realize until you start working behind the scenes. And we're going to do a whole podcast about podcasting behind the scenes. But I was just thinking about before we jumped on how, like, Kelly, you've been with me for multiple podcasts because we started with Straight Up Paleo.
Yeah, so we've been now onto I guess this is the third podcast. So it's Straight Up Paleo, jump to your podcast, jump to transitioning to your new show. Seeing a lot of good changes and excited for this next one too.
Yeah, so we're going to be bringing on so many amazing, incredible guests just to hear people's stories, hear more behind the scenes. I really love hearing more behind the scenes. And this is also filling for me a void because I don't do as many interviews on my own show anymore. So we just decided to start our own podcast. So you can get to know behind the scenes and we can interview some really, really amazing people. I mean, the Podcast Connector, I don't even remember how this idea came. I actually don't even remember. I just remember I had the idea and I told Kelly and she was like, yeah, let's do it. And it turned into obviously a lot more work than we anticipated, but we've met so many cool people, so many hosts, and the podcast community itself is like, I mean, I've just met the best people through podcasting. I've met the most interesting people, and I want more people to like get in on that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like podcasters are all like in the same boat in a way. Like they all are like creatives in their mind and they just love having that connection and being able to talk to other cool people, which is kind of what this is all about, and like growing those connections. And so it's really fun to be able to speak with tons of podcasters and also guests on podcasts too, because I feel like we're all like the same.
Yeah, and everyone's so passionate. That's my favorite part.
They are very passionate. And people who host, I think hosts are so interesting, especially hosts that do a lot of interviews, because I always wonder more about the hosts themselves. And I feel like there's so much that people don't get to see about that. And the podcasting space in general, like, I have the pod course too. So we teach people to start podcasts, and just, I'm in so many areas of the podcasting space, and a lot of people don't really realize everything that goes into it and what it's really like. And I just think it's a really interesting industry because so many people are listening to podcasts now instead of other mediums. I mean, everybody now, if you look at book tours now, people don't even go on traditional book tours as much anymore. They just go on a podcast circuit. Like, this is where advertisers are spending their money. A lot of people are listening to shows, and people don't realize what goes into it. I think people just think you put in your headphones and
super easy press record.
Become Joe Rogan.
No, I've definitely, my eyes have been opened since starting to work with you, Christina, and then the Podcast Connector. I definitely didn't know how much goes into it. So we definitely have a lot of knowledge to share, I think, especially for those that are newer and starting out, but also just for people in general who might not know everything that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I think it's cool to get different people's perspectives. Like, I'm excited to talk to, I guess, I mean, I've never really bluntly asked you guys about what you think about different things and get that kind of perspective because, I mean, I've hosted for a long time. I understand the like with the sponsorships, the brands, the hosts. I've worked in that aspect, helped other people start their shows, and then you guys see a lot of the behind the scenes, and we've all done the editing and all of that, and just met a lot of people in the space as well. So I think it's interesting to kind of get that perspective.
Yeah. And on the flip side, I'm sure Kelly and I are both excited to pick your brain too, just because you have been in this space for so long. You've seen it all, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've seen a lot. So it's going to be really fun. And I also want to talk about like with the podcast connector, why we started it more, because I mean, Kelly probably best of everyone has seen the most pitches.
Yeah.
Because you're handling the emails.
So many pitches, which is why like you wanted to start the podcast connector, because the amount of pitches that come through that are just frankly horrible, or they're even from PR agencies that are quote unquote like this is their job to do this, and they send you these emails where they don't even spell your name right, they don't even know what the show's about, and it's just they're pitching to completely irrelevant audience, and it's just a waste of time. It's a waste of our time. So that's why that's how you birthed basically a podcast connector, because it's like, why are we wasting the podcaster's time when we can literally do some matchmaking and make it like great for both sides?
Yeah. And I was kind of doing it myself. Like I feel like for the last 5 years, I was just always the referral person. People would always have me like connect them with different shows, and I was just doing it anyway because I know a lot of hosts. And that's the thing in the podcasting space. Like not all pitch emails are awful, but a lot of them are not that great, and hosts get so many pitches, and it's getting harder and harder for people to tell which ones are really the gems, because it's sort of like you'll get 100 pitch emails and like 2 of them are gems and really great, but not everybody has the patience to sort through all of those. And people are realizing how great a medium it is. It's such a great medium because people who listen to podcasts are super invested, right? It's one of the best ways to get your voice out, in my opinion, especially in today's world where everybody wants to multitask and people can listen to shows while they're doing other things. And podcasting has just blown up, and you get this really intimate conversation. People really, really get to know that host, and the trust that is built is so invaluable. So then to get your message out on somebody else's platform, even if it's a smaller show, those audiences can be so loyal that they can give you more ROI than a bigger show without loyalty, right? So just seeing how valuable the medium is in itself, and then how there are so many cool people. Like I know so many amazing people who want to get on shows, who should get on shows. I'm like, you need to get on shows because your message is so unique, so interesting, but they don't necessarily have the connection. And the thing is, from the host side, most people just take referrals. Like I usually will not have somebody on my show unless they've been on a friend's show, or somebody is telling me, hey, this person's super legit, you'd love them, I'm going to take a referral. And that's how most other hosts are now. It's kind of, I mean, it's kind of who you know with a lot of shows, not always, but there's a lot of it. Like with anything, there's just networking and knowing people gets you in the door. And I mean, we're all very like blunt, straightforward people. So I don't really sugarcoat anything, and that's just the truth. You can get on more podcasts when you know people who host them. And if you have a referral, you're more likely to get in than a random cold pitch that often just gets deleted, because a lot of hosts at this point they just delete every pitch. And a lot of hosts have expressed to us like that they have struggled to find good guests now, because a lot of people are saying the same shit over and over again.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think there's a level of trust too that goes into it. And that's why the podcast connector is so unique, because we take the time to get to know all of the podcasts in our network very closely, and we build those relationships with the hosts. And so they can trust that everything we send their way, we personally feel is going to benefit them. And same for the guests. like getting to know everybody on a personal level, I think is such a key part of what we do here. And I think it's extremely unique.
Yeah. And like, okay, here's the thing. So if you haven't heard of the podcast center before, if you're a host, you should apply and join because I mean, it's totally free for you if you host a podcast and we just get to know your show. We'll hop on a call with you and get to know your show and what you're looking for and what you're not. And then it's basically just so that we know what you're looking for. And if we have a guest who comes our way who is super aligned, then we will recommend them to you. And there's no obligation to book anyone at all. But the point is like we're taking the time to make sure these are super aligned people, so it's a great way so that you don't have to sort through all of the messy pitches, and it's like, no, this person would actually be a really good fit, and you get that referral piece and somebody who knows your show ahead of time instead of just a cold pitch. And then we started doing these happy hours we're going to do once a month just to like get to know people, and we just had our first one. It was super fun.
It was really
So
great.
definitely
Yeah.
join.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was so cool to just, get to know people. And in the podcasting space, there's so many cool people. So that's the podcast side. And if you just go to thepodcastconnector.com, all of this information is there too. And then as a guest, it's if you want to spread your message by getting on aligned podcasts, like we're taking the time to match you up with actually aligned shows and not just cold pitching you to random shows. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have pitched themselves to my show and I'm like, this makes literally no sense. Like this makes no sense, and so it's just wasting my time and I'm getting frustrated. So
Mhm.
we match you up with aligned shows, so you know that they're going to be, the best ROI for your time too. Quality shows that really match with your message, where their audience would really want to hear your message, and you're not dealing with the like slimy cold pitch thing, because I know a lot of people who waste a lot of money on getting pitched and they don't really they're either connected with shows that like aren't even worth their time, or it's not even really nothing's really coming of it. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of
exactly. I
how
feel
it
like
works.
it's like both. If you're a podcaster or a guest, you both have huge like benefits from being in this. Like podcasters, like there's no requirement from you, and you get to be part of this really cool community where you can have host happy hours, and we set you up with really aligned guests. Especially we have a lot of guests who are new to the scene too, who haven't been on a lot of podcasts. So it's a new voice that podcasters are definitely striving to have on their show, and that it would benefit their audience. And same for the guests, like we get to connect them with awesome shows, whereas like a typical PR agency kind of just wants to fill that number to make sure they get them on just any show, and it could be something that's like completely irrelevant, so
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome to see the past few months how that has benefited both sides and how much people have liked it.
And
Yeah, and I feel like selfishly, we've met a lot of cool people. Like the guests that we bring on have been so cool.
Yeah, extremely cool. And even the first happy hour, it was just so much fun
I feel
talking
like,
to these cool
yeah,
people.
people learned so much from each other in that 1 hour. Just by talking to other podcast hosts, and we were kind of, commiserating over common struggles and giving advice. And it was really valuable and really inspiring.
Yeah, and I will also say for guests, like I literally have a whole course in there. Like I literally have a whole course if you sign up as a guest about like how to market yourself, how to show up as your best self on a podcast, tech, equipment, like cuz I really want to make sure people show up because hosts talk, right? Like hosts talk, just to be honest. People will text each other like, "Hey, have you had this person on your show?" Like so people will be like, "Oh, that person's audio is really bad," or like they showed up 5 minutes late. People talk, and so these are all the behind the scenes tips.
Mhm.
If you want to
More to
really
come.
make your best impression. Yeah. So I love this business. I think it's been so much fun, and now we have this podcast where we can talk about all the behind the scenes stuff and, um, you know, see what we can share with people. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dig in. I can just see some of the future episodes. I think we already have so much content that we really want to dig into and talk about just based on the things we come across on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm super excited. We are really excited to have you here listening. We're going to have a lot of fun. And if you want to learn more about the Podcast Connector, obviously you can go to thepodcastconnector.com and subscribe to this show if you don't want to miss our shenanigans every week.
Yeah, it's giving me some fun behind the scenes dirt.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.